What's going on, everybody? It is TripleCrown24 back today for episode 20 of the Sports Card Psychology Podcast. I say it every single week, but I truly do mean it. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. This will be a solo episode, and I get that the nature of this podcast is a bit more serious most of the time than most sports card podcasts or hobby related podcasts out there that you may listen to. But today's is going to be a little bit more serious than even what we're used to on the show. I'm not really going to be cracking my cheesy jokes or doing any of that stuff. And again, I'm going solo on this episode because today's topic is one that I think is almost an elephant in the room more often than not. It's a very serious subject that I think needs to be addressed, but not just stating that it happens, kind of bringing attention to it, but kind of understanding why I think is the most constructive way to approach this topic for me as a content creator. And as the title of this show will suggest, it is related to the addiction and gambling aspect of opening sealed wax slash sealed sports card products. And this can translate to TCGs or non-sports cards as well. I'm really going to be focusing on it from a sports card context. And when I say opening product, this also applies to alternative means of breaking sealed product, including and most notably group breaks. I do want to preface this discussion with the fact that I am all for people opening up sealed product. For those who are avid buyers of singles, just know that those singles are not available if people do not open the product to release those singles into the wild, if you will. I am also pro group breaks. I believe that they are good in moderation. There are some there is a dark side to the group breaking industry as a whole, just as there is with pretty much anything. And there are some dangerous areas, I guess you could say, with it as well, just as there is in pretty much every other arena within the hobby. And in some cases, participating in that rather than opening the sealed product yourself is beneficial. In some ways, I think it is more harmful. And it really just depends on a multitude of factors. But this show isn't really designed to make for you to decide whether or not you're going to join group breaks or not. This show is mostly to show what can happen if it becomes an addiction and why it happens and understanding that. So I just want to put that out there. Another thing with this too is that I have had my moments of weakness, and I will fully admit that, where I bought a box or two more than I should have, or I bought a box when I really didn't want to, but it was more so just a habitual behavior. So I have gone a little bit overboard with it. Now, have I gone overboard to the extent where I've racked up massive credit card debts, where I haven't been able to pay bills on time or had to make sacrifices to the essentials for myself or loved ones? No, I have not. I'm glad that I've never gotten to that point. For me personally, addiction is something that runs in my family. I think that's something that a lot of us can relate to. That sentiment might hit close to home. So I'm usually very cautious with being able to manage that, but I slip up just like pretty much anyone does. So my last little preface here is that this is not a I am holier than thou grandstanding discussion for me today. This is I guess, kind of peeling back the curtain a bit on a subject that is, I don't want to say taboo to talk about, but it is definitely uncomfortable to talk about, especially if this is something that one is experiencing on their own. So, with that being said, what led to me wanting to talk about this episode today? Well, one of the big stories in the hobby right now is the Mac Jones 1/1 Prism rookie that is out there. And just a quick spark notes, I guess you could call it, recap of events here is that there was a 13-year-old in northeastern Ohio who pulled or hit it in a break, one of the biggest chase cards of what is one of the biggest or most anticipated releases of the year in pretty much all of the sports cards, regardless of sport or product. And that would be the 2021 Prism Football Mac Jones Black Finite Prism 1/1 rookie. Now, this card is one of those that people they were pre-ordering their Prism chasing this card, and it's one of the reasons that the Prism product is pretty much more expensive than it ever has been before, especially upon release, is the chase for this specific card as well as cards that are like it in this product. Now, to my knowledge, the autograph version of this card is still available. There are also several big one-of-ones and even other low-numbered cards that are still out there. Plenty of them are still out there. Which ones exactly are still out there, we don't know. Not every single card is posted to social media, and even then, it may be difficult to keep up with which ones are still available without very detailed note-taking on the entire product. And that card has since been sold. It was sold for $100,000. We do know that. There are rumors that it was sold again for, I've heard, $160,000 and $175,000. I've also heard rumors that those sales are not true, that the owner of the card is trying to sell it for that. That part of it, I don't think, is as important to this discussion. It is relevant. But the fact is that the card, we do have a confirmed sale on it of $100,000. And I will just say, good for that young man. I am very happy for him. That could pay for his college tuition. That could pay for his first car when he starts driving here in a few years. It could go towards some expenses for the family, especially in an economic recession like we're in right now. That is life-changing money, especially for someone of that age. And nothing but positive vibes and happiness for that young man. I do not want anything about what I'm about to say to derail his situation that he is now in. What I will say, though, is that what is very interesting is that now that one of the big cards off the checklist is well known out there, and many people who frequent the internet hobby wise have probably seen that card posted multiple times. We know that that card cannot be pulled now if you open a pack or hobby box or whatever of Prism, or you join a break. And I'm hearing from a lot of different places that the rebuy on a lot of the Prism boxes for kind of the second wave of purchases that breakers or hobby shops are getting their next allocation of the product is higher than before. And this shouldn't be too shocking. I would say that really since the pandemic, this has become more and more of a common thing. Now, there was some time, I would say, at the start of the pandemic where we really started to see prices, they would drop right away after release. But ever since the run up, so to speak, I'm seeing it more and more often where distributors will kind of feign scarcity of the product or short supply of the product and hold back quantities in order to up that rebuy price once the initial wave of the product sells out very quickly. It kind of creates this artificial demand in relation to a supply that is not entirely accurate. So again, that is also a discussion for a different time. I could go a lot into distributors here, but the fact that this product has now gone up from its already absurd price point of $1,200 to $1,300 a hobby box to now what I'm seeing at $1,300 to $1,400. Maybe there are still some out there at $1,200. I can't say that I am actively in the market for one, but it is something to keep an eye on, and it's kind of eye-popping. Now, with opening this product, I'm someone, when I open product, I typically will do a case at a time. And the reason that I do that is because it usually gives you the best odds of getting the best cards. It is also an extremely expensive way to do that, and I am someone who sells every single card that I get out of the product. I'm willing to put in the time and grind to do that. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. It also requires breaking the right products. You cannot do that with every single product. So I kind of have to pick and choose my spots. And there's a lot of products this year that I've skipped out on, and it's something that I probably can't see myself resuming doing for quite some time just because the margins are not what they used to be. And a lot of people who do it my way are kind of in the same boat where you see them not really tackling as many products as they used to be. You know who these people are. They're very well known, reputable names in the hobby, and they've kind of been going away from that. But today's discussion more so relates to those who are only opening one box or who only want to open one box, and especially at a price point as absurd as $1,000 plus. Even $1,000 is a bit conservative for Prism football. The gambling aspect of it must be astronomical because if you go watch on YouTube breaks of this product, there are very few boxes that I have personally seen watching them where I feel that the person got their money back. Now, with the inflated box prices, the singles prices are also inflated. Guys who, if they were in a previous draft class and different times in the hobby, would sell for much less. You're seeing sell for crazy amounts. Like I think I saw a Davis Mills Silver Prism rookie auto selling for at least $300. I think maybe upwards of $500. And that's a guy who maybe back in the day you got $50 for upon release. Back when Prism SRP was around $100 a box, or even less than that. Back when it was even 80, when it wasn't that popular of a product, and $50 might even be like a day one price, and then it would drop down to maybe 30, 35 ish. Maybe if you got lucky on a certain auction, you could snag one at $20 or $25. So relative to the cost of the box, if you're thinking $50 and box prices back in the day are $125, so you're looking at roughly 40% ROI. It is about the same, I would say. If you're looking at $500 on a $1,200 to $1,300 box, that is still around $400. The problem is that these hits are getting more and more difficult to pull, and that is kind of your day one price. And that is also assuming that Davis Mills continues to have hobby interest. Now, naturally, in his second year, he's going to have to start performing because, well, he's not a rookie anymore. People love to chase their rookies. We know this. And the odds of that card maintaining that price are very slim, even if you get one of the best hits in the case. So you get one of the big five quarterbacks, we'll call them. So those would be Trevor Lawrence, Mac Jones, Trey Lance, Zach Wilson, and Justin Fields. A lot of those cards are going to go down. If you want to look at a quarterback class that is similar to the 2021 class, let's go back to 2018 and pretend that the 2018 Prism release was the one that we were getting now rather than 2021. And look at what the values have done over the past few years of those Prism cards. Now, there are certain guys who have had their day in the sun they're not at that peak value anymore, but they did go up. We see a guy like Lamar Jackson during his MVP season. He definitely went up. He's not quite at that point now. Baker Mayfield's another big one, and Baker is taking a huge hit, of course, just with the nature of what's going on with his franchise. Josh Rosen, safe to say, will never make it. I don't even know if he's actively on a roster. And Sam Darnold has seemed to have burned all of his opportunities now with two different teams. So two of the five guys immediately that were the big names from that class appear to be duds. And long term, the clock is ticking on some of these guys. Lamar Jackson does have an MVP that will extend his longevity. But if he never wins anything in the hobby, we just talked about that in last week's show, will he do something? Baker Mayfield, kind of the same thing. It seems that he's going to need to get out of Cleveland, and he's going to need to build a name for himself out elsewhere. Josh Allen is in a different position now. He does need to start, building those defining moments and winning more than one playoff game. He's got to get deep into the playoffs. He's got to go to the Super Bowl in order to sustain the prices that he's at. But that one guy is really driving the 2018 wax at this point in time. Now, you could say the low-numbered parallels of a guy like Brady or Mahomes will drive prices, and that is true as well. The possibility of pulling those guys, make no mistake about it, does add something to it. But really, it's just that one guy. And a lot of cases are built by Panini to have a certain number of autographs from your A stack. So that's your top tier names. Like, for example, a case of certified football. In inner case, typically there's the sixth biggest name from the class. 1 in the 12 boxes from the inner case is going to have an RPA of that guy, whether it's a low numbered RPA or just your base RPA out of 399 or whatever. That remains to be seen. That's more so just a roll of the dice if you happen to get lucky. But you have about a 1 in 12 shot of hitting that RPA if you open a box, which at $120 a box back in the day was all right because you could still get, maybe $40 to $50 in cards. A lot of these boxes are still being built with that same mindset from 5-10 years ago, but now the price for something like certified is $400, $500, $600 a box. And when you increase that, the ROI that you're getting back is so much less. It's really just a testament to inflation. Now, it's not necessarily what we're seeing with, like grocery store inflation or gas prices, that kind of stuff, but it is hobby inflation. Your hobby dollar is not worth as much today as it was 5-10 years ago. So knowing this and with how many people are aware of this and how easily this information can be accessed if you just, ask people who were around back then, why do we still continue to open these products, especially on I think the basketball and the football side are the biggest culprits at these absurd prices? I think there's two really big answers. Number one, we don't care. And that's unfortunately, I think that's something that's really up there for the really wealthy, those who can open $1,000 box of cards and get $50 worth of cards, but they don't really care. They're not going to be selling what they're getting out of it anyways. It's just fun for them. It's a hobby in the same way that going out on the private yacht is a hobby, or round of golf at the local country club is a hobby. Things that might be a bit more higher end for your average Joe. However, if you look at the other side of things, it's because of the gamble and the possibility that you could get a card such as the Mac Jones. And I think that is really the source of the addiction. And it's going to hurt the people who think more so that way because they can't afford to open up a $1,200 box or spend that money and get nothing to show for it. Even joining a group break, if you do it enough times, it can add up very quickly. And it's a bit more disguised if you're joining a break for, say, $40 to $50, or you're opening a blaster for $40 to $50 and getting, $2 worth of cards out of it, or whatever the case may be. But that adds up over time, and it can be more palatable when you're getting those chip shots, right? If you say, for example, you look at if you're buying a new car, one of the ways that car dealerships will sell the car to you is that it's payments as low as $399 a month, which sounds much better than $17,500 for this car. That's a large number, and the sticker shock effect might scare us away when we see those lower numbers, and it makes us more willing to jump on that. Kind of the same thing with group breaks. You can join a random team group break, one box of Prism for, let's say, $40. And maybe you do get random the Patriots, and you're like, all right, here we go. All I need is one Mac Jones base card. I'm good to go. I got my money's back. And I have the possibility of pulling something insane, which, yes, you do. And if you do pull that card, the amount you're going to X, so to speak, on your money is going to be absurd. But the probability of that is so incredibly low. Now, I don't have this fully pulled up yet, but one of the things that I did in preparation for this episode, and one of the things I wanted to talk about in relation to this gambling, there's really three main points. The first one is that Schrodinger's cat thing that I mentioned earlier, and not knowing what you're going to get, and kind of the allure and the mystery behind that, this Pandora's box idea almost to some extent. So what I did is I quote unquote joined, I have air quotes going for those listening in podcast form, 10 group breaks of one box of 2021 NFL Prism via Whatnot. Now, I didn't actually spend any money on these breaks. I did not buy any of the teams in these breaks, but I pretended like I had the teams in these breaks. And it was from 10 different breakers. 5 of them I did buzz style, which is a random team style break where teams go off the board as you as spots fill. So say that I took the first spot. Usually people will have like a wheel with the team names or a deck of cards with the team logos on them. I'll give them a number. They'll go through the wheel and spin it that number of times, or they'll pull a card out. So let's say that for the first spot, I get it and I get the Packers. So now the Packers are unavailable for the rest of the break, but the next person who gets a spot will get one of the 31 teams left, except for they can't get the Packers. I also did 5 of them pick your team style, where the team that you were going to get was made clear to you and you were bidding to get that specific team. So 2 different styles of breaks, because I think that that would impact it. And I looked at all 32 teams in the NFL. So if you look at this, that would be 160 spots that I quote unquote took in Prism football for both styles of breaks, 320 spots overall. And I broke it down and the numbers came back alarming. So what I did was I took essentially bulk base. I assumed that no matter how many base cards I got, they would all be worth a combined $2. Even if I just got one random offensive lineman for the Jaguars, and that was the only card I got, it's $2. I mean, there's going to be cases where you get the Vikings and you get the Brock Lesnar base that I think is like a $5 card. So that was kind of my justification to even it out. So all base bulk was $2. Bulk rookies, so not those top tier names, but guys who were lower tier RPS guys like a Dwayne Eskridge type or a Tylan Wallace or any rookie that wasn't a RPS guy, I put at $1 each. The only exception was Micah Parsons, just because he's one of the bigger name defensive players. But other than that, everyone else was $1 each. And then from there, I took the cards and I looked at eBay completed sales to see what they were. And keep in mind, this was about a week ago, so things might have changed since then. The wax prices really have not changed in accordance, but a lot of the singles prices have gone down. So out of the 10 boxes that I got into, these are not cases, but just individual box breaks, the amount of times that I got my money back combined among the 320 spots that I, in theory, took was 51 times. And if you break that down even more, out of 160 buzz style or random team breaks, out of those 51 times, 32 of them were from the buzz breaks. 19 of them were from the pick your team breaks. So what does that tell us? Well, 32 of them, it's funny that it worked out that way, actually. Not ha-ha funny, but it basically means that per break, one of the 32 teams was the one that I was able to at least break even on. Now, all of the ones that I made across all the breaks, I made a profit on. There were none that were exact break even based on spot prices, which it just so happened to work out that way. It would be difficult to get the exact number back. But among all of those, often what I found was that it was through sheer luck. It was the times that I didn't think I was going to hit. For example, one of the times I, in theory, had the Rams and they hit a Marshall Falk auto and then they hit a few colors. I think they hit a Matthew Stafford Red Wave in there. And that definitely was not the team I was expecting to hit, but that's the one that I ended up actually making money on the spot if I had taken that team in the break, or I was randomized that team in the break. I will say that in every single time I had the Patriots, whether it be buzz style or pick your team style, so chasing after that Mac Jones, I never once made my money back. I never saw a Mac Jones card in all 10 boxes. Now, is that normal? I don't know for sure. I can't say how often you pull a certain rookie, but the rookie checklist is actually fairly extensive. So to pull Mac Jones, despite how many of them are out there, it is not as easy as you may think, but it is still Easy. I probably just got some bad luck. 2 out of 10 times with the Jaguars, I made my money back. Let me see here. I have my notes off to the side. 2 out of 10 times with the 49ers, I made my money back. And the 49ers was actually the team where I had one of my best pulls. That was one of two breaks. And that was one where I actually had them pick your team style for this break. I forget exactly how much it was for this specific one, but in theory, I hit a Trey Lance Silver Prism autograph, which I pulled up here. I'm going to show you the completed sales. If you're listening to this on podcast form, then you'll just have to go with me here. But you can see the completed sales just for the silver auto. Here's one at 1,000. Here's one at $8.99. Again, I cannot confirm. I've talked about this several times with the whole comps thing. I cannot confirm that these were actually completed. Were these just shilled up and then not paid for? I can't say for sure. But here's one at 800. Here's one at 1,000. So yes, I did in theory make a lot of money on my spot price, especially if I were to get this graded and it came back at 10. I'm sure I would make even more. The problem is that none of these sales, except for maybe this one right here, did I make my money back on the box. Now, some of these first few I would have, assuming that they were paid for and there were no issues. But in addition to that, remember, these are on eBay, so you are paying fees. You're paying shipping as well. So did you actually make a profit? Debatable. Highly debatable. The other card that I pulled was a Jamar Chase Color Blast. And kind of going through here, that was another card where I kind of came out ahead. But there was also one where one of the breaks that I had, I came out ahead was a Kyler Murray Color Blast. That was one where I was actually random the Cardinals. So that was an example where I paid a little bit more on the random spot price than I would have liked to for a team like the Cardinals. Again, I didn't actually buy into these breaks, but we're just assuming that I was the one who ended up buying these spots. I paid more than I probably would have liked to compared to pick your team prices for the Cardinals. But hey, I got this Kyler Murray Color Blast. These I have been told fall 1 per every 10 cases, or at least that's the word on the street. And if you look at these Color Blast prices, aside from these really huge names, like look at this DK Metcalf right here, even when you're pulling these beyond case hits, these are still not even bringing the price of the box. So what I saw for the most part is that I got some really decent cards. Like I got some really cool autographs, some really big name rookies in there from my little experiment. But again, I only got my money back 51 times out of 320 possibilities. Even though I got some really cool stuff, it still would have been cheaper to buy the singles. And the scary part is that if I were buying into these over the past week or so, when I did this, those singles prices probably went down. So how many of those breaks of the 51 where I did make money on did I actually end up losing money on? Well, probably less than 51 at this point. It might have even been cut in half if it was really extreme. And what I found really interesting was that the majority of them came from the random team style. So when I even had an opportunity to basically choose my own destiny and go after the Patriots or go after the 49ers, I still didn't come out ahead. Now, this is the nature of group breaks. And what I'm saying shouldn't be too shocking to anyone. But still, you saw some of those prices of some of those cards. And I'm sure that you've seen some of those cards posted up on social media. And what that does is it just reaffirms the possibility that those cards could be in that hobby box that's sitting down at your local card shop. It very well could be. How likely is it? Well, we can't even really tell that because Panini doesn't put odds on the back of their products. But I would say based on the print runs and how often we see certain parallels come out, the odds are most definitely not in your favor. Even if you pull decent, you are still going to take a heavy loss. Which really brings us again into the question of why are we participating in this? Why are people spending this money? So again, either they don't care. That's not really too much that we can do about that. It's people who have plenty of money where they can afford to do this and it's not a big deal. And hey, more power to you if you're able to do that. If you're someone who's more so the average Joe and you're going out and doing this and you're getting skunked and you know it, it is very similar to what we see in other areas of addiction. And I want to compare it to two areas. This segment I want to spend more time on, but just for the sake of time in this episode, I don't know that we'll get to touch on all details. And that would be sports gambling and loot box systems. So let's look at sports gambling. I saw a tweet regarding the Mac Jones that we talked about at the start of the show that really stood out to me. It said that the person who allegedly bought the Mac Jones card for the second time, or even the guy who has it for the original $100,000 sale, has more leverage than someone who, say, went out and put $100,000 on Mac Jones to win MVP for the NFL 2022 regular season. Now, there are some truths to that, and I think there's some really key differences that invalidate that argument a bit. So what is the truth to that is that the Mac Jones bet, for largely speaking, unless it's tied into something as a standalone entity, is all or nothing. He wins it, you get paid out, you know exactly what you're going to be paid out. He doesn't get it, you're out your money, and you know exactly what you lost. Whereas the card, even if it tanks, say that it dropped 80%, you could still get $20,000 back on that, which when you're losing $80,000 doesn't sound all that reassuring, but I guess there is some silver lining to that. I don't play in that arena, so I really couldn't tell you if that really makes you feel better, because I just couldn't imagine myself buying a card like that. But maybe for those who can, it is something that is worth considering. I think the difference, though, for me is that Mac Jones winning MVP has a very strict criteria. He has to be voted as MVP, and that is it. Where that card going up in value, we've seen this time and time again that performance doesn't always 100% dictate hobby prices. If so, it would be extremely easy to tell who was going to be successful and whose prices were going to go up and whose were going to go down. There are a lot of factors in it, and Mac Jones will always be the second best New England Patriots quarterback at best. I would consider him lucky to even be the third best one behind a guy like Drew Bledsoe. And among collectors, it's going to be very difficult for people to want to go after Mac Jones, and I think they would, wanting to pursue someone like Bledsoe or Brady, especially if they were around or even collecting at the time that either of those two guys have been active in the NFL, which is a problem we run into. The other part of it is that Vegas will, or whoever you're gambling through, will pay you out if that happens. The Mac Jones situation requires you to find a buyer, and a card like that, making the sale, I can only imagine, has so many complexities to it. Most likely you're going to have to go to an auction house, and they are going to take a cut of it. You're going to have to strike when the iron is hot. You're going to have to sell at the right time, assuming that there even is a right time. And holding the card too long, sometimes even if you're taking a loss, it may be a better idea to take that loss rather than, keep it and hope for the best with something like that. So that is one part of it that I kind of disagreed with when I saw that on Twitter, is that the sports gambling mindset is that it's a safer thing than sports gambling. But at the end of the day, when you're spending this money, you are still taking a loss. And the idea that you could still recoup something is only true if you are able to find a buyer, and how much they're willing to pay for that card is extremely speculative. And I think that's a very dangerous mindset to have. And that's why so many of the so-called investors have failed, is because this is not like the stock market or like a lottery ticket where you know how much something is trading for, you know how much you've won, and you can go cash out on it. It just does not work like that. The other part of it is an arena that I think is incredibly similar, but does have some key differences as well. It's not, I think this is a more accurate comparison than, let's say, sports gambling, and that would be the gachapon style of opening sports cards. Now, first question may be, what the heck is a gachapon? Well, it's short for gotcha, and you might have heard the term gotcha game, which is most often associated with mobile video games. You know, the ones that you play on your phone, like a Candy Crush. I'm sure you hear the stories about, you know, some kid or someone racking up like $40,000 on a credit card playing these mobile games, and all off of microtransactions. And it's something that I think has become more and more popular. And it's based on a really simple concept, one that you've probably been exposed to many times in your everyday life. For those who are watching on YouTube, I'm going to share an image on my screen, and immediately this is going to look familiar to you. You ever go into the grocery store or a big box store and you see this toy capsule machine? Maybe it's just a gumball machine. Well, this is the equivalent of a gachapon, and it's a Japanese term that basically revolves around this idea that you insert your currency into the slot, you turn the thing, and you get a prize that comes out. So I'll give you an example of this. When I was younger, at the local Meijer, they had one of these machines that had these little tiny, I guess they were glass or ceramic, some type of little Stanley cups, where it showed the team logo, the year that they won the cup, who they beat, and how many games it took. And I used to love those. I was a big hockey fan growing up, not as much anymore. I do still love my Red Wings, but that was the chase for me, was pulling those Red Wings little Stanley Cups, especially the ones from the 90s, you know, right around the time that I was born. So getting those were kind of my chase ones, but there was no way of knowing when you would get one, because you can't really see the bottom of the machine and see which ones are next. I do remember at one point in time, there was the 1997 Red Wings Cup that I saw in the machine. Now, if there was another one towards the bottom, I didn't know, but I did know that that one was there, and that eventually it would get towards the bottom. So I just kind of check on it every time that my parents would take me to Meijer. And you put the quarter in, or 50 cents or a dollar, whatever it was. I think it was 50 cents to get one of these things. And you pull it out and you're like, oh, darn, I got the 1989 Calgary Flames again. I already have that one. So then you have a decision. You didn't get the cup that you wanted. So would I put in another 50 cents, turn the crank again, and hope I got what I wanted? Or would I just move on? And for most people, it's just a one and done type of thing. You know, maybe they spend money on it one time and they're done. Those who actively pay for something are very few and far between. The same thing applies to mobile games like a Candy Crush. Most people just play it free to play. They don't spend any of their currency for in-game currency, for loot boxes that can help themselves with progression in the game, or to unlock certain cosmetics that are kind of a status symbol. A really popular example of this is Fortnite. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Fortnite, but Fortnite was I don't know if it still is, but it's a free-to-play game. You didn't have to spend any money on it. Now, if you were playing on, you know, Xbox or something, then you would have to have the Xbox Live membership or whatever to play online. But for the most part, you didn't have to spend any actual money specifically relating to the Fortnite game. However, if you wanted to get different rewards or progress in the season, you would have to buy a season pass, and you have to purchase the V-Bucks, which are the in-game currency for Fortnite, in order to lock the different cosmetic skins. And the skins themselves don't really provide you I shouldn't say don't really, they do not provide you a competitive advantage. It doesn't boost your stats or anything. It doesn't increase your drop rate on the rare items. It's basically just a flex, or it makes your character look cool. But in order to get these Fortnite skins, they give you a sense of urgency, where they're only available for a limited number of hours, and you don't know how long they will exactly be available to you. In addition to that, You may see players out there who have these really rare skins from back in the day, or ones that cost a bunch of V-Bucks. I know that there are some that are locked behind a huge paywall where you have to have like exclusive systems. I've heard that there's ones where you can only get it if you're playing on the Xbox, or you can only get it if you buy this new console bundle deal. And sometimes they'll even offer you sales on this in-game currency that has no real world monetary value in order to entice you to spend that money now and then, because the sale will only happen for a limited time. Now, in games like this, such as Fortnite, or say a Ultimate Team in FIFA or Madden, I have seen people who have said that they have sold their accounts where they have paid money for it. Pokemon Go at its height, I saw that too, where people would spoof these accounts that had all these high level Pokemon. And then you could go online and purchase their accounts from them, or purchase certain characters if the game has a in-game trade feature. You just have to be careful with those things, I assume, because that to me sounds like you could get scammed very easily. But that aside, the big allure of this is that, you know, the idea is to get you to keep spending money over and over. And for a lot of people who want to play these games when there are free alternatives or even cheaper alternatives out there, the concept is absolutely ridiculous. And for me personally, as a kid, I could have just gone on eBay and maybe found like one of those little ceramic cups of the Red Wings for a couple bucks. Yeah, it's a bit more than what it would be if I got lucky and pulled it out of the machine for 50 cents. But how many tries is it going to take me to get this reward? But that's what they don't want you to really think about. It's one of those things too where you see these rare inserts on the Panini stuff, like the Color Blast, for example. On the side of the box it says look for ultra rare Color Blast, and you open up a box, you don't get one. Well, let's just open up another one, maybe it will be in the next one. And as you invest more money in it, you feel more obligated to continue with it. It's just one of those things where, say that you, again, going back to the car analogy, you purchase a used car and you've put some money into it, and all of a sudden a major repair comes up after a few little cosmetic things that you touched up here and there. Well, you're already invested into this car for whatever the car itself costs, plus any little upgrades along the way that you might have made. And the vehicle is probably depreciated depending on how much you've driven it. So you're presented with two options. You go get a new car, or do you pay for the repairs on this one? And you almost feel obligated in a sense, unless it's just beyond the point where it makes logical sense, almost to an extreme case. You're going to put the money into it to fix the car, especially if it's a car that maybe you're attached to, or it's something that you're really thinking of. And I think the same concept can really apply to sports cards. Now, the one key difference is that there are alternatives out there. You can go out and buy the sports card singles. They are not locked in the gachapon, if you will, where the only way to obtain these cards is to open up the boxes. There is a bit of that goes on with the exclusive parallels. So your no huddle ones, when Prism no huddle comes out, where you get all the disco ones, those are locked behind hobby only style boxes where you have to buy those hybrid boxes in order to get them. Or some of like the fusion parallels that are locked, or the team all ones that have like all the waves and that kind of stuff, that those are also locked behind those specific releases. You can also see that in some extent with hobby only products. Prism is a product that does have retail. What you can pull in retail is limited compared to hobby. Now, there are some retail exclusive parallels. One of the more popular ones we've seen across all products in more recent times is the Genesis for the Mosaic releases. Those are exclusive to retail. But for the most part, a lot of your options or your best cards are going to come out of hobby boxes, or certain parallels are going to, and certain cards are going to be locked behind the paywall for hobby boxes. And again, you do have to have those people who are going out and buying this. And what this does is creates something that's called whales. So a little bit earlier on, I told you that most people are not going to spend this kind of money because they can't afford to, or they think it's ludicrous. But there are those who are willing to spend, and some of them will spend excessively, either because they can or because they are addicted. And I always hope in those types of cases that it is for the former. Even then, it may not be the best idea, but we do need people to open up these boxes to get those singles out there. But if it is the latter, then that is extremely troublesome. And there are resources out there to get help because it is a form of gambling addiction. It's great to do it in moderation. In fact, I think it's important to do it in moderation. And a lot of us can trace our hobby origins back to opening packs. And I do feel sorry for the youth of today who go into shops and they kind of have their hands tied as to what they can buy because there isn't that many affordable options out there for those who are on a limited budget who want to open packs. Singles wise, there are a lot of options out there, but let's face it, opening packs is fun. It is addicting. I think there's just something about the feel of opening the wrappers and going through the fresh stack of cards and the excitement of not knowing what you're going to get and the possibility of what you could get that really drives this. And it ties into that just one more mentality. And one more keeps coming, and maybe eventually you do find what you want, but often it's going to come at a very hefty price rather than just assessing the situation. So that is something that I see happening more and more often, is that people are you're seeing these whales who are spending these massive amounts, they are largely the ones who are funding these hobby boxes. That is why they are the price that they are, is that people are paying the $1,300. And when I see the videos where they're complaining about the price of the box or just so disappointed that they got skunked, it's kind of just, you got to just sit there, put your hands up and say, what did you expect to happen? But it is dangerous when you go on social media and you do see that mindset, or you see all of the highlight reel posts that show people pulling insane cards, because that is not realistic. That is a highlight of what could happen, but it is not based in reality of what will probably end up happening. That is why I think opening wax is something that I encourage you to do it. I encourage you to join group breaks. Support your local hobby shop and buy wax products from them if you can afford to do so. But if you do so, do it responsibly. If you think you have a problem, then reach out. You can reach out to me too. I'm not going to say, so-and-so reached out to me from last week's show and I was able to help them. That's not going to happen. If you need to confide in someone, you are more than welcome to confide in me. If you want to go to someone who you know and trust better, hey, that is perfectly fine too. But I just think with Prism football right now, seeing what the prices are, and I think more people are starting to realize this, and it will eventually help hobby box prices go down. But it is something that isn't very much talked about. And my platform here on YouTube, I always try to give someone something that they can take away from a video. And the purpose of my podcast is always to make you think and to give you information that you can find helpful. It's not to preach. It's not to brag. It's not to show off. It is meant to be educational, and it is meant to at least make you think, and in some sense to entertain you as well. Today's, I think, is mostly educational and is a cautionary tale that you can really go down a dangerous rabbit hole if you're not careful. So if you did take the time to listen to this entire show, as always, I do greatly appreciate it. Would appreciate it if you could leave me a rating. If you are listening on Spotify specifically, there's a little rating show. So if you do enjoy it and you want to give me that feedback to let me know that I'm doing a good job, then hey, would greatly appreciate it. If I'm not doing a good job, then also let me know that too. I would love to know how you would like to see the show improved. I don't want to just dismiss this topic right here and just kind of, go back to business as normal, because I think that's maybe a bit irresponsible of me and takes away from the heaviness of this subject matter. But I do want to say that coming up here in a few weeks, I'm going to be on Hobbypalooza as a host once again. I don't know exactly what time, but the current plan is to do a live version of this show. Initially, my thought is going to be a Q&A. I may bring a guest on and do a certain topic if you guys would like to see that, but I would love to hear your feedback of what you would like to see from a live version of this show. If there's a certain topic you want me to discuss, if there's a certain guest you want me to have on, or I guess an idea for a guest to have on, will probably be the best way to put that because people have different availabilities. Whatever the case may be, I would love to hear your feedback in the comments down below. And if this is something that, again, if this is something that you've struggled with at any point in time, or you feel that you may be struggling with it now, I highly encourage you to reach out to those who you can trust and you know that you can put your faith into, get help and resolve the situation for whatever the case may be for you specifically, because it's never too late. And the last thing that I ever want to see is someone get burned by the hobby and it sour on it and turn away from it, just because I know how much joy it brings me and many others out there. But you get a hobby responsibly. So with that said, thank you again for listening. Take care, stay safe, be kind.